So today is a bit of a I told you so moment for Serge Benhayon TV, but it's without any glee that I came across this discovery. Since 1999, you've been saying that emotions are actually the root cause of illness and disease. And in the Science Daily, I was researching, and I came across an article about the fact that children who suffer child abuse have a much higher prevalence of heart disease and other chronic illness in later life than children who haven't suffered any physical abuse. That's even when you take out all the different variables, like did they smoke, did they not smoke, do they have obesity, etc. So all the lifestyle factors are taken out, and still, if you've had physical abuse in your childhood, you're going to have a higher incidence of chronic disease, or specifically coronary disease. Now, obviously, physical abuse in childhood doesn't physically, we can't make a physical link with a vascular disease or coronary disease. So where's the missing link? This is when science starts to look a bit deeper and say, okay, so do emotions, do our traumas have a effect on our actual physical health and state of being? And the conclusion is pretty obvious. So, but you've been saying that since 1999, and it has been treated as fanciful and out there, when in fact this is very concrete evidence is now coming to light of this. So I just wanted to read something else which even takes this a bit deeper, which is from one of your recent sermons. And it's about the actual science of this, if you don't mind me. It's actually very beautiful, and it takes it out of the realm of abuse straight to love. So to love unrestricted and to be loved unrestricted is by all means the deepest desire of every single human being. Whether this is admitted or not is beside the immutable fact. The fact that we want true love, that we want to truly love and be truly loved back, is not just words, a hope, wish or desire, it is pure science. And it goes on to say, yes, the multidimensional array of consequences that result from our choices to be or not be the love we truly are is indeed a science, a living form of science that is science in its energetic truth. One could say that the relationship of this particular type of science, that is, the science that is formed as a result of the relationship of our choices to be the love we truly are or not, and the type of sciences that we know anent the human body are so related and inescapably entwined, they are one and the same when the roots of their driving forces are sought. So basically what's that saying is that if we choose not to be the love that we naturally are, there is going to be a science to what happens thereafter. And that's where I want to start this episode. Because you can see how this then relates into family life. Because if we have someone that chooses not to be loving and abuses their child, then there's a science that that child has a taste of abuse. They might not be loving to themselves. They may not feel that they are all the love that they are. And then we go on to see an actual scientific play out in the physical body and in the result of illness and disease. Over to you.
I don't need to speak. That's the interview. The viewers can just hear that. There are a number of, how deep do you want the roots to go? That's the, if you took a cross section or a sagittal section of a tree, and if you removed everything and just have a look, the roots go deep and spread far. So when we say that emotions are the root cause of illness and disease, that's only quite surface stuff when it comes to the root cause. The root cause can also be the number of desires that we hold, even before we're human. So we have to look at the desire factor, the desire intent, and then there's also the fact that we have to be moving in a way that is congruent to the universal cycles we live within. We have to be at one with the constellations. There's so many different levels of, let's call it dis-ease, hyphenated, before we get to what we call above the soil and on the surface of life, the medical diagnosis of illness and disease. And look, if we stay above the surface, we're always going to be at the mercy of post-cause, again hyphenated. Post-cause effect we're good at. We've been able to control the death of cancer, the cause of death of cancer, etc., but not the rate of diagnosis, and that's out of control and still escalating. We still haven't got a cure for exhaustion. Everybody's caffeinated to the eyeballs these days, just to function, just to get by, just to stay awake, just to pay attention, just to work, just to function, as I said before. So we've got solutions, but we don't have answers yet. So when you said before that my propositions can be fanciful or taken as being fancy, well, show me a model that's actually stopping the rate of illness and disease. We've got a great model that handles it very well, very good at managing, marvels of surgery, amazing medicine, pharmaceutical, etc., but we haven't got anywhere close to getting a grip on the rate of diagnosis. In other words, the production of what illness and disease are. And we're not going to do that until we address desire at the immortal level, intent at the immortal level, and the fact that we are surrounded by lies, such as the fact that we are only human. So when we start to address a composition and reorientate everything by addressing what is there energetically and understand that we are a living science, there's no fixture to us because we are constantly moving. But we are moving within cycles we have to be in correspondence to, and when we're not, we become a fixture by way of being behind where we should be. And when we're behind where we should be, the universe that we belong to and live inside of adjusts and offers us a correction. Well, that correction is a pull to get back to where we should be, and therefore there's a discarding of what is required to let go of to put us back into the moment of presence that we are dwelling behind. It's called the eternal yesterday, and that's when we start to get illness and disease.
So we're basically living in the eternal yesterday as a human race.
Oh, definitely. That's what time is. Time is the eternal yesterday. It's the never tomorrow, or the never today, I should say.
So there's a cycle, there's an evolutionary pull to be greater than human. Could you say it like that? To be more than what we see and feel and taste with the reductionism of five senses, when we know that there's a greater soulful aspect to us. If we're living in that reduction, is this part of what constitutes time?
Yeah, if you don't mind, because we're trained to reason along a linear way of understanding logic and rationale, I'm just going to have to use my hands if that's okay. Not that I don't, but bring them into the vogue and the camera. So if that's the present moment, humanity is existing by way of movement and conscious presence here. But this here, which is our true today, our true presence, requires everything that is where we're going to be next to be transported by way of conscious presence to where we should be, to where we are today, physically located. So the universe is designed so that consciousness ahead of ourselves, in other words, where we expand to next, needs to be embodied by the body that dwells on whatever plane it is receiving it. We are the opposite of that, and we're the only place in the universe that is the opposite of that. We're here. So that means that because we're supposed to be here by virtue of what is there, but we're here by virtue of what is there, that means that what is here is constantly repairing, constantly impaired, constantly
being corrected.
Correct. That's the problem. And that's the production of illness and disease. So illness and disease is not a bad thing. Yeah? So what it is constant signaling that we are living where we shouldn't. Our rhythms, our life, the way we speak, the way we love, the way we have relationships, the structure of family, how we work, the reason we work, the lack of purpose, the lack of commitment, the lack of true concentration, all of those things that are here, modeled here, are imposing on this body that is living here. But because this body is responsive to what is here, there is this tug of war. And that tug of war has been called Kurukshetra. So let's not go into the fanciness of that word, but really it's just the tension between presence, yesterday, and where we should be.
So the body in that presence, because the body can't but be present because it's made of divine particles, and you might want to go more into that, or we can just leave it at that. But the body is constantly discarding and saying, no, don't move like this, don't behave like this isn't true to my nature. I respond to love. And everybody knows this from the core of their being. As the quote said, we all long to be loved and to love unrestricted. We know that love is our foundational square one naturalness, and yet we're living in lack of commitment, frustrated at everything, all of the things that you mentioned. And so we're drudging through life in something that doesn't fit the vehicle, and then so the vehicle has to say, no, we've got to cast this off. You need a stop moment. You need to have a sore back, so you stop and look at how you're moving. You need to have cancer so that you can realise you're running yourself into the ground. This is what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not so much that it's a punishment. It's a correction based on the universe saying we can only support you in your magnificence. And because at this moment you're not accepting your magnificence, we have to get rid of that which is not magnificent. And we call that illness and disease, but we should be not accepting anything less than a multidimensional form of love, a multidimensional form of truth, a multidimensional form of relationships, a multidimensional form of family, etc., multidimensional form of work, intent, purpose, etc. And when we don't, the universe says, but that's a reductionism. That's a compression that we can't keep up with. Now, if you consider that humanity is in the eternal yesterday, that means it's living in a circulation of compression where there isn't any true expansion. There may be technological advance, which is just the rematerialization of material in different forms. That's all it is. But humanity themselves are not evolving at the rate that the universe is constantly expanding. So, for example, one of the best proofs of the fact that we are divine particles is that the baby responds to love without even knowing the word. Babies respond to nurturing and care, silence, gentleness, beauty, grace, and any form of depth of focus and attention and nurturing without even knowing the word, without even speaking. And we write that off as instinct, but instinct should be a dirty word because
that's
really
the currency of the universe.
Exactly. Yeah. The body that's just been born and it's beautiful and fresh and unpolluted, unsullied by adulthood, we could say, or the forms of idealism.
Adulthood we've created. Yeah.
Correct. So it's responding naturally to what the universe is. So when we abuse a child, they'll feel it. If we pick them up abruptly, if we're not right ourselves and we hold a child, they feel it. But if we are calm and we pass on that calm, they align and respond to that calmness. Now that's what I call the aliveness of science. Science is constant. It cannot be laboratorized. You cannot just grab science and fix it, because what you do is the moment you fix it, you'll get a result. And thereafter, the result's already moved on. Everything is already moved because you've already captured it. So that double-blind trial thing might get us some indication of a result that occurred at that time. But once we move on, humanity has moved on, universe has moved on, we have to keep up, even though we've had some great medicine as a result of that.
And in that living science, you talk about, it doesn't just observe what is, it also says what's next. Because if we discover, for instance, that adverse childhood experiences are the greatest contributor to chronic disease, then what? You know, like if we just leave that in the laboratory, you know, in the study and say that's fixed, then anyone that's ever had an abusive experience as a childhood, in their childhood, is now doomed to a higher possibility of heart disease or chronic disease. Yet, but if it was a living science, we'd say, okay, so where's the medicine in, like, how do we support people to make more loving choices for themselves and others to actually break this cycle? And then there's a movement into the next transmission of what's required.
Correct. The only true fixture is the misconception of time. Time doesn't exist. And so our fixation with it is in a fixed moment. It doesn't really exist. Time doesn't exist. And so when we say our next is actually our true presence. We have to be constantly expanding. You cannot love someone the same twice. You have to love them more. That's what we're built. That's how we're built. And we don't have that anywhere in our model of life. Look, anyone who will... this is a great example. And this probably places health, well-being, and illness and disease in its correct degree. So, you ready? Let's say if somebody expresses absolutely pure, true love once a day, on a Monday, let's call it. And even though the next day is the same day, but we call it Tuesday. So the sun seems to arise and fall, whatever, but it's really only us
it's another day on planet
spinning
Earth.
around.
Yeah.
Correct. The sun doesn't go up and down, we just spin. All right, so we arrive and we call it Tuesday, even though it's the same day. If that person were to repeat, I'll say this slowly, if that person were to repeat the same amount of absolute, pure, unadulterated, devoted, adoring love, they would be, according to universal medicine, the science, in a period of correction and therefore on their way to illness and disease.
So how far away are we from understanding what life is about, if that is the case? Because we would think that that's the antidote to everything. But you're saying, no, it's constant expansion. And can I ask also, because I've heard you speak about the fact that time is related to the reductionism of our apparent issues and hurts. So if we're, and I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, you'll be able to expand on it better, but if expansion, constant expansion is our natural state, the opposite of that is a reductionism that locks us into the squeeze that time feels like on the human being. You know, when you have those experiences of feeling like you're overwhelmed, like everything's coming in on you, on top of you, you feel squeezed and crushed by time, as opposed to those moments where you feel your own spaciousness and you feel like you could do so much in the space of 1 hour that it just seems like you're living in a different realm. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, first and foremost, let's declare something. The definition of health has to one day move to its true meaning. And health isn't just the vitalities that we can measure of the body, and it's certainly not what it has transformed itself to be these days, which is free of illness and disease. That's not health. True health is constant expansion. True health is the aliveness of responsivity with the cycles that we actually live in. So as long as we keep adjusting and adapting to the expansion, then we're going to be healthy. And the body represents that. It actually shows those results. Now, you're talking about reductionism. Reductionism is the intelligence that seeks to reduce the bigness or the magnitude that composes who we truly are. Once you have reductionism and adhere to that level of ideal or intelligence, then you end up with what we call compression. This is what you're talking about, and that's where people feel the anguish, the overwhelm, the depression, the languish even of not being as alive and vital as they should be.
It just blows the paradigm out of the water of what health is, because when you feel what that feels like in the body, to be constantly deepening, constantly evolving, constantly going to the next X, then function is disease. Being a functional human being is to be in a diseased state. And this then goes to answering the question of why not just children with adverse childhood experiences get ill, but people that look like they've got it all together and have had a healthy upbringing in the ideal of that word, and yet the disease is still very prevalent.
Yeah, look, it's part of, in the book, An Open Letter to Humanity, there's a chapter or two where I talk about the problems with magnificence. We're actually going to move into such great magnificence, we won't know what to do with it because we haven't prepared ourselves for it. And we are naturally magnificent. And this isn't rah-rah stuff. It's not, positive psychology or anything like that. It's truth. It's our equal right or our equal inbuilt ability to be magnificent. We're greater than human. But that doesn't mean we're not human. It doesn't mean that we don't have a reality as human beings. But being human should be much greater than it currently is. So, for example, I've shared this on stage, and I know you know, so I'll put it on the interview. I'll say regularly to my wife, I told you I loved you yesterday? I lied, because today it's even grander. Or I might say, last week I told you I loved you greater than the universe. Well, that's expanded. So, we're outliving the universe that I was talking about back then, because the universe has got bigger, so I have to keep adjusting to how much I love you. But this is constant game. But although it's a game, and it's lovely to play it, we know the science of it. And my body responds to it. So the words are coming from my body, that is aligned, my body is aligned, to the fact of that expansion. So I'm actually very genuine when I say, I actually love you a lot more than how much I loved you yesterday, even though yesterday was the capacity of how I imagine all the love in the universe was. But what I feel today in response to where I am, that feels small by comparison. Now, I do have off days. And when I have an off day, I don't say that. So that tells me that I haven't moved on to the expansion.
That's beautiful. What happens though if you're talking to somebody that is living the yesteryear model, the eternal yesterday, and can't even fathom their own magnificence? They might be depressed, etc. How do they then connect to these cycles and this constant evolutionary expansion that you're talking about? How do you make the leap?
It's very difficult. If somebody is caught in the eternalness of yesterday, and for them that is the only reality they can aspire to, or they've succumbed to that, and that is their period, full stop. Then we've got psychology, psychotherapy, psychiatry, medicine, depression, antidepressants, etc., that are very good at helping that person manage themselves in that condition. The medicine that I speak of requires us to be responsive. And if somebody decides to not be responsive for whatever reason, and they've allowed themselves to slip into that overwhelm, then it's very difficult to come out. And I respect that, and there's no judgment whatsoever. And they, according to what I understand, the science of reincarnation is, they will get another chance. There's no eternalness to any form of condemnation. We get an absolute first start when we're born, and we have a fresh body, etc., etc. So we need to understand that medicine is also responsivity. Medicine is also attention, focus, purpose, and dedication, adoring life, adoring people, never accepting any form of abuse, zero abuse. All of those are actual aspects of medicine that help us understand what's next, which is actually the true presence.
So going to those subtleties and the responsivity and the sensitivity and reading life at a deeper level will support you to come into that present moment.
That's correct.
And I can attest to that, because the more attuned that I've been doing this work with you for many years. When I came to it, abuse was normal. Like a certain level of abuse in my life was normal. And when you've got statistics like 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence from a partner, 1 in 3 women will be sexually assaulted before she's 16 years old, etc. These are pretty damning statistics. So, in fact, we live in a society where abuse has been normalised. So it's not actually a stretch to say that a lot of people are living in a level of abuse that they would regard as normal. I was reading an article recently about a woman that said, "Oh no, he broke my knee, but I don't really regard that as domestic violence. I think of that as, getting slapped around or something. He just pushed me over the couch and I broke my knee." But she couldn't equate that with domestic violence. And she goes on, "Besides, I started it. I told him he shouldn't be smoking pot when he's got a lung problem." And I mean, that's not funny. That is something that somebody thinks is a normal situation. But I completely understand that, because, when I've been in periods of my life where certain levels of abuse have been normal, it's like, that's just the way that it is, And so, but to come out of that is that starting to look at, like the fact that you're going, zero abuse is normal. It's like, let's set the bar high so that we can actually look at the rot of humanity and have a chance. Because if pristine love, in a static sense, repeated every day, is still disease, then, we've got a long way to go. But it does take baby steps. You can't start to go, "Oh yeah, you know what? That tone of voice with me doesn't feel right anymore. That feels like it's jarring. So what's going on with that person?" And you invite greater and greater levels of regard for what you have in your environment, and what you say passes and will be the love that you expect and accept in your environment. And then it just gets, it is a delicate unpacking process. You don't go from 0 to 100 straight away, but it does definitely change. And you've got the model of that, because you've got people in your student body that do the way of the livingness as their religion, that have made this discarding a way of life so that love becomes the foundational element of how they live their lives.
We've got a lot of problems. One of them is the fact that we can't even measure how amazing our love, vitality and exuberance is when we are living under the impulse of purpose. We've also got other problems, such as the fact that we've got very fast cars, very fast trains, long flight aeroplanes, more megapixels than we know what to do with. The latest 3-way camera on your mobile phone, all that sort of stuff, iCloud storage. And then you say to me that, a woman perhaps in Australia dies every fortnight from domestic violence?
I think it's every week.
Every week, is it? I'm not sure what the statistics is, but I did see it on a billboard in Sydney once. I can't remember the exact figure, but that's even if it's a fortnight and it's not a week, even if it was a month,
well,
even
actually,
if it was
one man
year.
a month dies.
Well, a man as well.
Yeah, one man a month dies of a violence from a person they know, an intimate person.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the point of hopping on a plane that can fly 18 hours non-stop or 22 hours non-stop? That's all great expansion, and it's helping the world in a very big way. So is 4K and 8K shooting, of films, I guess, or documentaries or whatever. We're capturing more of the intricacies of the ocean, life, nature, etc. Great. but not if we don't stop abuse. That to me is ridiculous, and that to me is already sickness. So where's our model of health if we are accepting abuse? And so that's where the conversation needs to begin. We need to redefine so many things, so many standards, that if they do not, then we're going to be constantly held in not just yesterday, but the day before yesterday. So there may have to be the eternalness of yesterday's yesterday to explain the level of compression and retardation that we've allowed to sneak into our model of life.
You're absolutely right. Like, we've got a war on terror. Billions have been spent on that, and yet we don't have a war on domestic violence. We don't have a war on abuse. We don't have a war on child abuse, such that this is now the greatest risk, health factor risk in people everywhere. So absolutely, we have to redefine what health is. We have to redefine what we're here for. This is about evolution.
Thank you.
The material in this video is based upon the principles of the ageless wisdom, which offers an energetic understanding of life. Any references to science are references to energetic science, as presented by the ageless wisdom, and not to evidence-based science in mankind's current era. Any references to specific aspects of medicine are to illustrate the relevance of energetic wisdom, as presented by the ageless wisdom, in the interplay of bodily illness and disease, rather than contradicting the current theories of disease causation or in any way to replace epidemiology. The principles conveyed in this video are philosophical and religious, and thus are not verified within the evidence-based rationales and critical appraisal process of evidence-based science, including Consort 2010, compliant double-blind randomised controlled trials. Serge Benhayon and Universal Medicine's presentations and teachings do not diagnose, treat, prevent, or offer any therapeutic cure to any disease or illness, are complementary to medicine, and are never a replacement of or alternative to conventional medicine. If you have any questions or concerns about the prevention, cause, diagnosis or treatment of any disease or illness, you should consult a registered medical practitioner.